Hi, Joe Cerrone. Welcome to CAD 116, Chapter 8, Draw Commands. And today we're going to go over how to locate in both different draw commands, be able to draw lines, circles, arcs, points, and polylines. So as we go through and work with the textbook, I've got a mechanical title block that I downloaded from D2L. Remember, you can get these title blocks from the content section. All title blocks for CAD 116. And then I downloaded this mechanical title block, B-size mechanical title block right here. So here's my title block. And we're going to work on this in model space. So I'm going to go over to model by clicking on the model tab. And as you can see, the drawing board is set, and it's set with white as the background color. You can right click within model space and go to options. And on the display tab under colors, I wanted to go back to the original black background, apply and close that. But I prefer to use white background because it goes better with my title blocks. I'll go to colors, set that. Apply it. Draw commands are located right here. So we have line, polyline, circle, arc. And remember, if they have an arrow, that means there's subcommands or options within that. And then under the draw command, you can pin this to the board. We have splines. We have construction lines, which are infinite lines, rays, which point in one direction infinitely. And then we have points. And then we have the ability to divide things, measure, region, etc. So for example, if I were to just draw a line, I can come in here and just draw a line like that and escape. And that would be an input, that would be with a mouse input. Okay. As we look at this, we're using dynamic input because as I create a line, I get this dynamic input where it says specify the first point. And then once I have that first point, I pull around and I get this green tracking line. And so, for example, if I wanted to make this 30, I just type 30, and that would be a 30-unit line that I would create. And then as we go through and we look at other things, I can go through and I can erase things with the green crossing window and select erase. If I look at polyline, what a polyline is it's going to give me connected line segments. And so for this, I'm going to go to my drafting settings, and I'm just going to quickly enable a snap and a grid. And I'm going to say OK, and then I'm going to draw a polyline. It's just going to be like a plus mark. And I can go to the endpoint, or I can type C for close. And then what I have is a polyline, which is treated as a shape. And we like polylines because polylines give us the basic for three-dimensional drawing. And so if I were to go through and to change the view to like an isometric view, I can press pull polyline into a three-dimensional shape. And you can see that I'm hitting shift in the middle mouse wheel. And so polylines are very useful. And that's one of the reasons that we like to use them. If we look at quick properties, it'll tell us it's a 3D solid. 3D solids are 3D printable. I'm going to undo back. That basic shape. And so as we also look at line commands, back to regular lines, we can go through with regular coordinate entry. And so for example, if I say line from point 0, 0, enter, and then I can back this D for zoom, A for all, find where the origin is. I'm going to erase this one. Once we know where the origin is at, that's where 0, 0 is on the computer. And so if I hit the delete key and say line from point 0, alpha line, 0, 0, enter. Specify the next point. What we like to do is we like to use polar input. So polar input, when it's enabled, will allow me to actually see the values, and we also get this green line. And so if I want to draw a line 1 inch at 90 degrees, you just type 1, enter. If I want to draw a line 2 inches at 0 degrees, I can type 2. If I want to draw a line 3 inches at 90 degrees, I can type 3, enter. And this is a very good way to draw lines using drafting settings, polar tracking, and enabling polar tracking. I like to add or dial this down to 15 degrees and then okay it. And then I'll get more track lines. So if I'm drawing a line from here and I want to draw a line at 45 degrees, I can get it to a 45-degree angle. Once it's tracking, I can type in 3, enter, and draw a 3-inch line at 45 degrees. Some of the other methods we went through before, as far as relative polar coordinates, are another useful. So for example, if I wanted to draw a line from point 2, 3, come in here and erase this. I can say line, first point 2, 3, enter. The next point, yet 1, angle 0, it's easier to just use polar tracking. It's right there. But if I were to use the old school way, I'd say at 1, less than symbol, 0. And then again, it's so much easier to use polar tracking to go up 1 and 90 degrees, but again, old school at 1, less than symbol, 90. And then to get this other one at 45 degrees, or at least at 1.414 angle 45, if I can just get this out to a 45-degree angle, I could type 1.41. But at 1.41 less than symbol 45 accomplishes the same task. It's just more mechanical in nature. And so there are tools that are much better at putting in coordinates by using polar tracking. When we look at circles and circle commands, what we're looking at is just a lot of different ways to do the same thing. So center radius, and then as we look at some of the options within that, we can create center radius, center diameter, 2 points. And so as we look at creating these different circles, if I go to circle, by default, the first one is center radius. And so if I put a circle with a center radius, once it's drawn, it doesn't matter. It's just a construction technique for it. And then if I go and I draw another circle with center diameter, here's the center point, and then the diameter, I can come out here and say 2. They look the same as a radius of 1 or a diameter of 2. 2 points, 2 points, point 1, point 2. Next page. 3 points, circle, 3 point, 1, 2. Tangent, tangent, and radius is for when we have 2 straight lines. And we want to put in a circle between those. Tangent, tangent, radius would be tangent, tangent, and then I'll say a radius of 1. And it's a construction technique. And then we have tangent, 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 which basically gets into, if we were to go and draw a straight line here, another straight line, and then we're going to put in an angular line. Now this one might not be makeable because it's got to do the math for it. So I'm going to move this over a little bit more. Maybe it will work, maybe it won't. Tangent, tangent, tangent has to have all the mathematical elements to work to be able to create that. And so as you get into more design intent, you'll find a different use for these. And here we have 3-point arcs, start, center, end, start, center, angle. I really don't want to go through every single way to make an arc. Very often, it's just a matter of 3-point arcs, 1, 2, 3 points, point 1, point 2, point 3. If you have any precise values and locations, we typically draw circles and then trim them between the lines. When we go with start, center, end, we're going with an arc, start point, center point, end point. So it goes start point, center point, end point, I believe, because it likes to go counterclockwise. And that's one of the reasons I get into these. And so start point is 1, center point is 2, end point is 3. Start point, center point. Start, center, angle. It's best to just draw a circle and then trim it, let's say at a 45-degree angle, and then you can have another line like this. And then you just trim it because there's just a lot less math involved and a lot less button collection to get that arc at a specific angular measure. And that's a better technique than it is to learn some of these machine-oriented arc techniques. So we're not going to really go through all of these. They're not really very useful at this time, but you can see they are laid out in the textbook. And if we find an application that we use that, we can take a look at that at a later point. But for the most part, 3-point arcs, and then start, center, end, and then drawing circles and trimming them is the best construction technique for general design work with arcs. So as we take a look at some of these other things, they talk about creating these arcs counterclockwise. A bit confusing, but we'll keep that for maybe the intermediate or advanced CAD courses. Points, on the other hand, are a little tricky because by default, the point command is just like a pixel. So if I turn off the grid and I go to draw points, here's the multi-point command. And when I draw a multi-point, that's it. It's this tiny little speck. And you can, if you're really good, you can see the specs, but you hit escape to bail out of that. In order to use points, what you need to do is to set up the point style. And so that's what this goes into. And so under utilities, there is a point style command. And once we have set that point style, what I recommend you do is set it up in absolute units. And we could set it up at, let's just say 1 unit and see how that looks. And so when I draw points now, they're still really small because I didn't set a point type. So point style with this is still going to give me just a pixel, but if I want a square with a cross through it, now it's able to be visible to me. And so when I draw points now, I draw points like at the corners of a rectangle. And then I can always change that point style to make the absolute units maybe 0.12. And then if I were creating a construction where I wanted people to connect the dots, I could go through and create lines without snapping grid. So if I turn off my snap and my grid and set my O snap for just, they call points nodes. And so let's see if I can see that. Where's my node? So if I set up my O snap for nodes, I can then go and draw lines. And as I hover over these different nodes, connect the dots. And it's useful for a lot of applications when you get into three-dimensional geometry creation. But essentially, to work with points, you need to set up the point style. If I change the point style to a circle with a cross in it and okay it, then it updates the existing point styles as well. Continuing on. Polylines, as we talked about, are lines that are continuous. Polylines were created a long time ago, which allow us to do things like set up widths and thicknesses and things like that. And it's a good segue into our polyline drawing, which we will look at a later point. I thought I had it open. And so as we look at polylines, what we like to use polylines for is shape creation. So for example, if I have something that looks like this, and I click on the lines, this is a polyline, meaning it's a shape, meaning that I can extrude it and since it's a closed boundary shape, I get a solid. And 3D solids allow me to create Boolean operations. And so when we get into some of these other drawings where we're modeling things, like for example, this plate drawing, I can go through and I can turn off my center lines. I can turn off my dimension lines. And then I can have the shape that I can go into a southeast isometric or any isometric. And then if I wanted to model this, I can't just extrude the lines. Because what happens, it's on another layer that's turned off. So let me just turn it on to, let's just use that layer. And so if I were to extrude it, what would happen would be I'd get a net like this. You can use those snaps in 3D space and stuff. But this is like an eggshell. I can't do a lot with a surface. It's not editable in 3D. It's not printable in 3D. So we kind of got away from surfaces. Solids are better. And to create a solid, I can either create a polyline and join it, or I can create a region. I'll show you the p-edit command, which is P-E-D-I-T. What we do is we select the line and we'll turn it into a polyline. And then we join the box all of our line segments. And if it's been constructed correctly, it'll highlight and show you that it's a shape now. And then if I were to extrude it, when I extrude it now, and I'm creating this part, this is now a 3D solid. And if I go back to wireframe, there are easier ways. This is why we use press pull, because now I can extrude the cylinders. I'm going to over extrude them because they're going to be holes. So I'm just going to go and drive those up 2 inches. So you can actually see it, that these cylinders stick up above the solid. And then I can use a command like subtract. And I can select the larger shape, hit enter, and then subtract those cylinders from it. Again, subtract. And we'll go into these as we do more work and get better with our CAD command, as we start to work with it. But as we work with these polyline commands, we're going to take a look at being able to convert drawings, two-dimensional drawings, into three-dimensional drawings, so we can model them in 3D print them. Okay, so that takes us to the end of the chapter. I'm going to stop this recording and open things up for questions.